Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is going to be the next part of our quick note series. So in the previous video we implemented the UI for our login and sign up along with the navigation, and in this video we are implementing the backend service. So basically how the application will communicate with the backend. Okay, so without wasting any time, I'll just straight away jump to the code so we can get started. So the first thing that you need to do is get over here into this quick note server implementation. I have basically added almost all the information that are basically there in this file. If you are familiar with Docker, you can set up everything using Docker from over here. If not, all you need to do is basically to install a database service on your system and you're good to go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to guide you with the very basic structure, like how I have done it locally on my machine. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is basically to install this MySQL workbench. You can download it from the MySQL website, and just install it. And during the installation, make sure to remember the password that you set for your root. So basically that's something. Once you do that, what you'll do is that you'll need to create a schema. Like right now, if I go to the schemas, you will see that I have this quicker note schema over here. But let's say if I don't, if you don't have that, you can just click on this section, and over here you can just add the schema. Just remember to like not change anything, or if you change anything, you basically update those value on the client side or on the backend service as well. So that's basically something you need. Once you basically create that, you can close this from here, and then what you need to do is that you need to open this downloaded backend service on your ID, whatever ID you like. It's up to you. I am using this IntelliJ community edition, and I think that pretty much works for me. Okay, so basically once you install that everything, what you'll have to do is that you need to go to your env file. Okay, so over here you can basically define if you have like any env file. If not, you can set those default value. Right now I'm basically I have this env file over here. Where do we have that env file? This is the env sample that we have. So over here you can basically define all the relevant file, but you need to keep proper values for this. For example, first one is the database type. Which type of database are you using? If you have PostgreSQL in your system, you can define that over there, or MySQL. I'm using MySQL, so I'm gonna copy that and change it over here as MySQL. Second is database URL. That is, I think, pretty much fine. Then we have a user. So for user, for MySQL user, sorry, over here this is for Postgres. I'm not using Postgres. This is for the database MySQL database. Then we have database type as MySQL. Then we have this URL for quicker notes, and this is the quicker notes basically I created. Username is root. Password is the password that I basically created. Right now I haven't add that, but you can definitely add that. The password that you've used, I am using this password, which is root1234. So we'll just change that to this. Then we have this JWT configurations. I have basically not changed anything other than this some file, because while testing you don't want the xtext access token to be available. So I basically added a 1 year long expiry. You can definitely reduce that, and then also for the refresh token as well. Then you have some email configuration. Right now we are not working on the email configuration, so you are good. Later on, if you want to basically communicate through email with the clients, with the customers, you can also do that and set up all those reference stuff over here. So I think that's something. Once you do that, what you have to do is that you'll basically have to copy that file, get rid of that, and then you create this env file like this. Okay, Now I have this env file, and this will basically be the one that will be installed. And once you do that, you can just like run this code. You don't have to change anything. Just remember, okay, there's something with the Postgres SQL. Okay, I have set the database to be MySQL. Why is it going for Postgres? Okay, there's something's wrong. I'm using MySQL. Okay, sorry. That is the problem. You need to make sure to comment the files that you're not using, so that it uses the correct value. Get rid of this as well. Let me just change this to this. Okay, now I think you can run this and this will work. Okay, you can see that now it's working. And now we'll basically be implementing the client side for this. So basically this is how you can create your server. You can create this through env file, and also if you don't want that, you can just delete that env file and temporarily keep the values as a default. You can add those values into your default section so that it basically loads the relevant keys and values, but it's totally up to you. Okay, now this is done, everything is there, and now we are gonna work on the client side implementation for iOS and Android. So we'll basically get rid of this, and let me just pull my Android Studio over here. Okay, so now inside this Android Studio, you will see that we had our older implementation, which is done, and we'll get started with the first section, and that is going to be the package. I'm going to create a package, call it data, and then inside that data I'm going to add this db section, because definitely db is supposed to be there, to be inside that. And then you will create one more package and call it data.remote. Okay, and now this remote section is going to be the one that will basically handle all the stuff that we need. Okay, so what do we need? The first thing that we need to do over here is basically to add the dependencies that we are going to use. So we need to load that libs.version file over here. You can see we have some existing implementation, some existing stuff that we've added, but we haven't changed. We don't have any Ktor client implementation and all that, so we need to do that. And for that I have placed it over here, so I'm just gonna copy those values for this. Okay, so over here you can see, and I am gonna Ktor implementation like this, and inside down here what I did is basically I added a couple of dependencies. Some are for direct, like for specific operating system or platform, for example Android, iOS. Some of them are used commonly. So we have coroutines core, and then we have content negotiation, logging. We use that for logging the request, Ktor serialization and Kotlin serialization. So basically these are some implementation that we need. And since we are using this, we will also be needing the versions for that. So over here you can see that once you add that, all the relevant stuff will be loaded. You can just then sync, and once you sync that, there is one more thing, one plugin that we'll be using, and that plugin is supposed to be Kotlin serialization. That is for based on the Kotlin version that we have. So basically that's also something that we will add. And once we add all those relevant stuff, we'll just wait for the build to be done. Now you can see everything is there, everything is done. And the next step would be to add those dependencies now into your code base over here. And like I said, some of the dependencies are the one that will be only be used for platform, and some of the dependency will be used commonly. Okay, so we'll start with the dependencies first. So the first thing over here is basically the OKHTTP client that is used for Android. We'll add that over here. Where we'll be using the core dependencies, content negotiation, logging, serialization, coroutine core, and Kotlin serialization. So these are the dependencies that we'll add over here. And then last one is implement iOS main dependencies. Okay, and inside that we'll basically be using the Darwin, that is basically one that iOS uses. So once we add these dependencies, there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is basically to enable the serialization. Because if we don't do that, we'll face some issues with the passing the values to to the server and then receiving the response for that. So for that, you remember that we added serialization. So we'll use the libs plugin dot Kotlin serialization. So that is the one, and then you can just sync it. So once you sync it, it will basically load the serialization for you. Now you can see everything is there, everything is loaded. In terms of configuration, we have done everything. We added the Android specific implementation, we added the common dependencies that were needed, and we also added the iOS specific implementation for the code. And now I will start working on the actual code, on how basically we gonna implement that. So now we'll go get over here into the remote section, and over here I'm going to create my first class, and I'll call that HTTP going to be class. I'm going to use an object for this. Okay, and inside that you can create function get HTTP client, and inside that what you'll do is that you'll basically be returning HTTP client. Okay, so now there are certain things inside this client that you can do. There's one more thing before doing over here, and over here you can define the engine. Now you can see that we have some are requiring engine, some are requiring other stuff. So over here you can define the engine as well. So engine is important when you're basically working with a specific platform. For example, if you are working on Android, you can use CIO, or maybe you can use an OK HTTP engine. If you're using on iOS, you might use Darwin and all that. So that is important. But what if we don't add any? What if we don't pass any into it? So if you don't pass any into it, what it will do is that it will load the required engine based on the platform it's running. For example, for iOS main, it will automatically take Darwin, and for Android it will automatically take OK HTTP. So that's why I'm not passing any element like any engine into this, so that it loads based on the platform on the runtime. Okay, that's one thing. And now we'll basically install some components inside that it will use. The first one is the content negotiation. So that is one. This basically be installing some other properties. So the first property is the JSON, and we need to pass some JSON properties into this. Then this JSON properties will require, let's say, unknown keys. We'll ignore that. Is lenient, will also be making sure it's lenient. And also, okay, so that's one thing. The second thing I'll need is that we'll basically install a logging that will basically be helping us with logging the request that we receive. So I'm going to use that for this, and then we'll also be using log level is equals to log level dot all, so that it prints everything. Thirdly is basically we'll install a default request. Okay, this default request is basically to add a certain header to the request, so that basically we are sure to use a proper content type. So for that, I'm going to use header, and I'm going to use header HTTP headers dot content type, comma, content type dot application dot JSON. Okay, so let's use that and implement that. Now we are done here. The first portion for this, basically the client section, is done. And now I'm going to go over here, create a new class, and call that API service. Okay, let's call this the API service and use it like this. And also we'll be using the wall client as HTTP client that we basically need. Now inside that, we'll create a function. Let's call that function login, right? And it should return some sort of, where let's use request as auth request, and response should be a result, and that should say auth a response, like that. Okay. So basically we don't have the auth request, we don't have the auth response. We need to create those, and I don't know, like normally, you would not know where you can find those, right? So basically to do that, what you'll have to do is that you need to go over here into this the backend API docs that I've basically shared with you. Okay, so now over here, when you get over here, you will see this is a one JSON that is basically the sign up request for sign up, and this is basically the response for that. Same goes for the email, and it has the same response as well. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna use that request over here like this, and I'll go back to Android Studio over here, and in the nodes model section, I'll right click, go to new, and then this Kotlin data class. This is a plugin you can install from the marketplace. So you will just paste that over here like this. Okay, and let's call that auth request. Okay, and you can generate that. So once you generate that, you will see that the file is basically created. You can just use that same object over here to import that. Now we need the auth response. For auth response, again, you can go over here into this section, go over here, right click on the model, create that, paste that section, and name that as auth response. Okay, and let's just generate that as well. Okay, that is auth response. Okay, now the auth request and auth response is done. Now what we need to do is that we need to implement the API call, right? So now there's one thing that I'm right now on my mind is, and that is basically when you're using emulators, like I'm using Android emulator and iOS simulator. For Android, you cannot call directly the localhost URL or like localhost IP to access the server that's running. For iOS, you can definitely use that because it kind of handles that, but Android emulator, you need to, for Android emulator, you need to specify a different URL. So basically, which means for Android, I'm going to use a different URL, and from iOS, I'm going to use a different URL. So that's a case where we have, one thing, we need one thing, but we need different for Android and different for iOS, at least for now. Okay. So in that case, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use use a expect method for Compose or Kotlin multiplatform, and call that base URL emulator. Let's say I'm going to use emulator for this. Okay, and over here I'm going to use is equals to, sorry, not is equals to, it's going to be a string. Okay, so once you do that, it will ask you to create the missing actuals. So I'm going to use iOS main for that. And like I said, for iOS, I don't care. I can use simple localhost 8080 for that. And also we need to make sure that we use HTTP like this. Okay, that is for iOS. And we go back over here and we implement the Android one as well. So for Android, we are going to use the Android specified 10.0.2.2. this is a URL that you can use to access the localhost from your emulator. So that is for the emulator, right? And you can also create, let's say, a very a normal base URL for this. For base URL, you can also, it should not be expect, it should be just a const wall, and let's call that http://localhost 8080 for now. So basically, I'm not going to use the base URL. It's just for the understanding. And now inside that, what we can do is that we can create some of the endpoints. For example, you can say private wall login endpoint, and that is going to be base URL emulator, because I'm using emulator for now. And then after that, I'm going to use auth/login. Now This auth/login you can find over here in the backend request that we basically use. So for example, if you go over here into the auth routes, over here you will see that /auth, and then you have login endpoint over here, which is a post method. This is also important. The post and get methods are important to make sure. And one more thing that you can check is that for sign up, the return is created status code, and for sign in, it's okay. So that's also important to remember. Now over here inside this login section, I have this auth/login, the endpoint that I've used. One more thing I think we need over here, and that is basically a suspend function. Okay, so once you do that, the next thing would be to make the call. So now I'm going to say wall. Instead, I'm going to use return try catch exception. Okay, and inside that you can define result dot failure, pass that exception into this, so it returns that exception. In case of try, I'm going to say wall response is equals to client dot post. Okay, that is the post method that you need to call, and then over here you can call that set body, and the body is going to be the request object that you're going to pass. And then also for the post, there is one more thing, and that is the URL string that you can define, and that is going to be login endpoint. Okay, so once you do that, you will get that post request response for that. Now over here you can use response dot status is equals, and like I said, for login, the status code is http status code dot okay. So if the status code is okay, which means now you can define the result as a successor, and that success is going to be the response object that you get, and then from there you can get the body of the response, and I'll convert that into auth response. Okay, so cast that as an auth response. For else part, again you can say result dot failure, and then over here I'm going to use exception, and now over here you can say that failed to load data, or something went wrong, whatever you want. Okay, now this is an implementation for login, and we can have a similar implementation for sign up as well. So the for sign up, again you need to change that is sign up. Okay, and over here it should also be sign up. Request response should be fine. Over here you can use the sign up endpoint for making the endpoint, and also instead of http status okay, like I said, in this case it's going to be created. So once you use created, you are fine, and then you have this whole implementation done. Later on, let's say you want this base replace this base emulator with the base URL, you can just go get over here and change it, and or you can even say wall, you can say private wall URL active URL, let's call that. Okay, and instead of that you can use active URL. So later on, let's say you want to change to base URL, you can just change it over here, and then you're done. I'm going to use emulator for now because I need different emulators URL for Android and iOS. Okay, this implementation is done, and now what we'll do is that we'll basically do the same. We'll basically implement that over here inside this sign in, inside the sign up section, and let's see if it works. Okay, so before implementing all these things, we need a couple things that we can use, or like we can reuse. So I'm going to use a seal class auth state. Okay, and that is going to be object normal auth state. Then we have object loading auth state. Then we have class success, and it should say wall auth state. Last going to be class failure wall error is going to be a string, and you can also use auth state for that. Okay, so I created this auth state for this. Along with that, we'll also create auth navigation. Okay, and that is going to be object navigate to home. And now basically what we'll do is that we'll basically implement the stuff over here. I'm going to say wall underscore UI state is equals to mutable state flow of UI auth state, and we need to define a default for that. So for that, I'm going to use normal. Then I'm going to say wall UI state is equals to underscore UI state dot as state flow. That's one thing. Second one is going to be private wall underscore navigation flow is equals to mutable shared flow. That is going to be at auth navigation, and it doesn't require any default value. So I'm going to say wall navigation flow is equals to underscore navigation flow as shared flow. Two more things we need, and that is going to be function on error click. Okay, and then there's one function on success click. So basically on error click you need to do something, and then for on success click you also need to do something. Oh sorry, it should be on success click. Okay, so now when someone click on the error case, what we need is that basically we need to reset the UI state. So I'm going to say UI state dot underscore UI state dot value is equals to auth state dot normal. Okay, in case of success case, what we'll do is that basically when basically success happened and someone wants to go to a new screen, what they need to do, for that case I'm going to use view model scope dot sorry, not view model scope. So for that we need to navigate back to home. So you can use navigation flow dot emit, and then you can say navigate to home. That's that. Okay, we need to make sure that that's part of auth navigation. Okay, so now we did all this implementation without much on the UI side. So we go over here to the sign up screen, and you will see that we have all this whole implementation for the column like this. So I'm going to use that, take that out, and make a couple of things. For example, first one is going to be UI state. So I'm going to say UI state is equals to view model dot UI state dot collect as life cycle, collect a state with life cycle, and then I'm going to say when UI state dot value. Okay, and now is normal. So for normal, I'm gonna paste the same code that we had. So basically in case of normal, we will basically show all the common code that we had, right? And then other than that, if it's success, so in case of success, we can do something like, let me use that column, and inside that you can create a text, say successful, and then over here inside that you can also create something as UI state dot value dot response dot email. So we'll show the email of that user, right? And then you can create a button, and then on click should be something as view model dot on success click, and inside that you can always use text as go back. Okay, so that's for success. For error we can do similar, something similar is failed. Okay, so rather than you use this, you will use something as error and from there you will use UI state dot value dot error, and then you can say something as retry so that it takes you there from the rest. And then you have a loading case, so from that you can use loading. So for loading, I'm again gonna use the same column, but definitely don't need this button. Instead, you can use circular progress indicator, and then for text, you can always use loading. So that's basically something I did for the sign up. And also for error case, it should be on error click. Okay. Now that's that. And now we go over here to the view model section. And in the sign up section, we don't have anything right now. So the rest of the stuff is ready. And we just need to do a couple more things, like minor stuff that we need to do. The first thing over here is basically we need to do, I'm going to say view model scope dot launch. Okay. And now over here, we will say request is equals to auth request email dot value and password dot value. That's one thing. Then you will say wall result is equals to, or before result, you can do value is equals to. So loading, we need to make sure it's loading. Then we'll say wall result is equals to client service. It's going to be API service. Okay, we don't have the API service, I think. Yeah. So over here, you can create your API service. And over here, you can say HTTP client factory dot get HTTP client. Also make sure to make it private. Okay. And now we'll say API service dot sign up, pass that request. Now you will say if success, you will say underscore UI state dot value is equals to auth state dot success, and you pass result dot get or null. Okay. Else you will say UI state dot value auth state dot failure, and I'll say exception or null dot message dot toString. Okay, so that's for sign up. Everything is done. Now we need to implement the navigation flow, and I think then we are good. We are ready. So for navigation, there's slightly different handling for navigation, and for that you can always use a launched effect. This is basically some side effects that you can use. The good thing about launched effect is basically it runs only one if you are using with some value like true or maybe unit. But let's say if you want to try it with the UI state, so this will change every time there is a change in the UI state, right? Like there's a change in UI state, it will again run this block. I just want this to be running once, so that's why I'm using true or unit. Okay, now I'm going to use view model dot navigation flow collect latest. So about the shared flow is that it just remember the one value, like one time thing, so you can get that value, process that, and then done. For the state flow, it keeps that value. So that's the difference, and that's why basically we are using this for the navigation, so that it just fire that event once and then we are done. Okay, now over here I'm going to say when ID is navigate to home. Now we know that from here you need to navigate to home. Now there will be in case of sign up, it's very normal because the previous screen is in home and we know that, so we can just say nav controller dot pop backstack and then we are done, right? Okay, so I think that's pretty much what we needed. I think we can do one more thing, and that is basically pass that email back to the user so we can show that email in the screen, right? So what I'll do over here is that I want that email to be passed, okay, to the back screen. Right now we don't have that functionality, so Let me just change that. I'm going to say email string, and rather than using this, instead I'm using class this time. And over here, in case of success click, when user click on success, we'll also make sure we pass that email to this so that we can pass it over here, right? Now inside that, over here, we know that we have an email. We just printed it over here, right? So you can use wall email. Okay, and you can use the same thing over here and same over here as well. Okay, now we're good. So basically, why I'm using this, because I want that email to be passed to the previous screen. So normally, if you want to go back screen, you can use just this and that will be enough. But in case you want to pass, that entry to the previous backstack, for that you can use nav controller dot previous backstack entry. And then you can say save state handle dot set. Over here, you can use email as a key. And then you can also define the email as like this. Okay, so that's basically something we did. And now in the home screen, so this is basically the home screen that has this nav controller. Now over here, what you can do is that you can use your email key for that. So basically for that email, what you can do, you can use nav controller dot current backstack entry dot save state handle dot, and then over here you can use get state flow for this. Okay, and you remember that we basically set that as email, and the initial value is basically an empty value. Okay, and then you can also say collect as state with lifecycle like this. Okay, now this email is going to be part of the section on top where basically we have the icon, right? So let me just find where is that icon that we've used. It should be somewhere over here. Okay, so this is the image which is basically being used, and let's just use a column or a row. Perhaps a row should be fine. And then we'll take that. Inside that, we definitely need to use that align inside that row. So I'm going to say modifier dot align. So we are good in that part. And then along with that, you can use a text, and that is going to be email dot value. Say always email dot value else user, or let's just use email dot value dot let, and this point we'll use something like this. You can always do vertical alignment as center. Horizontally, I think we don't need that, so good. Center vertically. Okay, so what I did is basically I took that email from the previously installed screen and added it as a text, and the rest is basically similar to what it was. Now let's try running it. Now over here you have this. Let me try, and password is going to be 123456 1234556, and now submit that. Okay, now it's saying that there has been some serialization issue, and I think they're right. We need to make sure to use serializable for our request and response objects. Okay, try again. We might face a couple more issues because I remember we didn't added some things that we were supposed to do. And yes, okay, it's saying that there is a security policy, you cannot access that clear text and all that. So basically get over here, into the Compose Android main section, and inside that you can create a package, new directory, call that XML, and over here you will create an XML file and say that it is basically network config. Since basically we are using we are using network security config for this, and we need to define, like, when you're using HTTP calls, Android basically restrict that, asking you to use properly secured. But if you want, if you like bypass that process, for that you'll have to do a couple of things. So over here inside that you can say domain config and allow, and basically that is going to basically something you will set like this, and now inside that you will define the domains. Okay, so include subdomains true, and then over here you can define 10.0.2.2, that is your one domain. Second one is basically the local host, just in case I'm just adding it. Okay, now this config is supposed to be this XML network config should go to the manifest file over here, and over here you will say network config and define that network config like this. Also you'll use internet permission as well, because that's also important. Right, now let's try once again. This time hopefully it will work. Okay, it crashed. That was interesting. Fail to parse network config. Okay, something's wrong. Network security config, I think that should be that. Now let's try once again. Okay, this time it's working. Now we'll go over here as furkan2k@gmail.com. Password is 123456 123456. Submit, loading, and then you can see that it basically successfully logged me in. Signed me up, and now if I go back, okay, when I go back it's crashing for the reason I believe the way we are trying to access the value. I'm not sure. Okay, there has been some issue with that. Okay, I think there is something wrong that I'm doing. Let's just go to the success sign up screen in case of you're passing email. Okay, sorry. Yes, that's the problem. So basically we need to pass that email dot value. We are passing a a state value, state basically, not the value of it. So I think that's why basically it's failing. Now let me try once again. 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. Now let me go over here. You can see the successful email is there. When we go back, you will also see the email on top. So that's how basically this whole thing works. Now I have not yet implemented the caching. So let's say when I go back over here, rather than showing me the profile, it will again show me the email. And also when I go, like when you close the app and get back, you will see that it basically goes away, because right now we are not storing that value. We'll definitely implement that. Also the sign-in functionality is not yet implemented, so we need to implement the sign-in functionality as well. So let's just implement that first. Now we go over here to the sign view model, and you will see that I basically did these functionality. I'll just copy that functionality over here, go over here into the sign in view model and paste it over here, because this is the similar thing that we are going to use. And then inside this sign in view model section as well, we'll also be copying that and paste over here. Now over here there's just one thing that we need to change, and that is the sign in, or sorry, it should be login. Okay, the request, response, all the rest of the stuff is similar. And also in the sign in screen, like if I go to sign up screen over here, you will see we have this whole, implementation for all the states for launch effect, and also the same implementation is for this. So I'm going to copy that whole section from here, go over here into the sign in screen and paste it over here. Now inside that you will see we have this normal section. We don't need that. Okay, so let's just get rid of that. And now we'll do is that basically be using that login section over here inside this. Now we are done. Okay, now let's just rerun this. This time hopefully it will work. Now there's just one difference. I think one thing I missed over here, and I will do that. Okay, so we'll go over here into the login section, and rather than doing this, I'm going over here. I'm gonna use furkan1@gmail.com. Okay, password 123456. Sign up. You can see I can sign up. When I go back, this is taking me to sign up screen, but I want to go to the home screen. So there is a slight difference, because what happens is that when you go over here, the first screen is sign up, second screen is sign in, right? Now what I'm doing is that I'm just popping back stack, which means now it's basically just going one step previous. Instead, what I want to do is that I want to go more back. Now over here, what I also need to do is that basically we need to get back stack entry. Previously we were using the previous, because we just wanted to go to the backend. This time what we need is that we need to go to a very old specific screen. So for that I'm giving the home route. The home route is, again, where does it come from? This is basically the section. You can see the home here. So I basically gave it the home route so that it can give me the stack entry for that. And then over here as well, you can also define that, and inclusive should be false. Route should be home as well. Now once you do that, this means that this value will be set on a for the home route current stack entry, and also the back stack will also go to the home. The inclusive equals to false means that it will not be removing the screen. If you set it to true, it will also remove the home as well, which will make us land on a no screen. So that's why I basically set it to false, so that it can go back like to the previous screen or the home screen. Now let's try with the login once again. This time I'm very hopeful that we'll get the stuff as we wanted. So I'm gonna use furkan2@gmail.com. Password is 123456. When I submit that, okay, sorry, it should be 1, not 2. Okay, you can see this login, and now when I go back, you can see then the value is also updated over here, and now I landed on a home screen rather than landing on the sign up screen. So that's that was something, that was the thing that we wanted to do. And now what we'll do is that we'll work with some of the there's just one thing I think we missed, and that is basically to test it on while running on the iOS as well. I'm gonna set that false. There is some issues with the design. And now let's run this on iOS as well, and to see how it looks on iOS. This is not the iOS, this is the iOS, right? Okay, now over here, rather than I'm doing the sign up, I'm gonna go and do sign in. So I'm gonna say furkan1@gmail.com. Password is 123456. Submit. You can see it just basically printed everything. Going back, showing everything looks good. So yeah, that's basically what we wanted to do and what we did. So we are good on that part. There are some issues with the design and colors, so I think that's also some problem. We'll see if we can fix that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, You know what to do. Like the video, comment down below what was the interesting part of this video, or what exactly was confusing or something, whatever. Please do comment. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. So till then, as usual, happy coding.
Thank you so much for watching the video. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe and press the bell icon so you don't forget any update. If you got any question, you can join my Discord server. The link is in the description. Also, for quick updates and tips, you can follow me on Instagram. Until next time, keep learning, keep developing. Bye.